AeroViroment is a stock I find really interesting right now for a number of reasons. I covered them very briefly in a video a couple weeks ago, and they just kind of stick out to me for a number of reasons. I want to cover them. I want to have a video dedicated to them. This isn't going to be a deep dive. If this performs well, I wouldn't be against that, but I honestly have no idea if there's anyone at all looking up the stock, wanting more information on it. And I am absolutely no expert on it, but I do see a number of things here. The first being, I like what they actually do. So I don't own a lot of defense stocks. Maybe you're really into defense stocks, you know it very well. You probably might be able to find someone on YouTube that knows it more in depth if you're looking for a high level commentary on that. But what I'm looking at here is a company that has done well, obviously 155%, but also specifically dealing with drones. Drones, if you don't know, I mean, you've heard probably. I mean, the U.S. military has done lots of drone strikes and things like that, but not even that level. If we're looking at the Russia-Ukraine war, if you've been paying attention to that, I pay brief attention. I pay a lot of attention at the very beginning. Drones have been incredibly effective during that because they're so cheap. Obviously, even if you mess up with them, no one on your side usually dies, which on the battlefield, that seems dramatic. I mean, that seems a dramatic comment from me on this channel. I usually don't mention anything to do with that, but that is just the reality when we're talking about that. But they've been incredibly effective on the battlefield. So I and everyone else, I mean, they've done well, but people kind of see, hey, yeah, their drones and that sort of thing are doing well. I'm not the only one saying this. There's going to be more and more investment into it. And if AeroViroment gets contracts, gets this, gets that, they're going to do very well. I mean, $4 billion market cap. We're going to dive into the revenue and things like that in a little bit. But so like I said, I'm really interested in the drone aspect of the company. They do some other things as well. You can read about that. I don't know. Schwab's descriptions are kind of hit or miss. I would honestly just look it up and do some research on the web if you want a better detailed. I don't know why they do it like that, but it doesn't really matter. Let's look a little bit at the income side of things, the actual money. So balance sheet, they have very little debt. So yes, although this is a company that is smaller, and generally we associate that with more risk. Bigger is better. We know what Apple does. All of our phones, or many of our phones have it. We see them every day. Same with Google. You're using Google to watch this very video, or you search for it as well. Probably both. So we know those companies. We see them every day. There is, in the market right now, baked in some negativity for smaller companies. It's just the reality. There's been times where the markets really like small companies because they've actually performed relatively well if you look back historically, like an 80-year time frame. But anyways, that's a little bit off the point, except for the fact that there's going to be implied risk for a smaller company like AeroViroment. That's just the reality. But when we're looking in terms of actual debt and stuff, it's really not bad at all. They have some liabilities, but that's not even really rivaling assets. When we look at many companies actually look from a worry standpoint, an iffy standpoint. There's plenty larger companies that I'd be more worried about, at least from this balance sheet. And then income. So we're doing 717 million. I almost said, I'm so used to billion. 717 million in revenue. I mean, when we're comparing it to a company that was $4.25 billion market cap, that's not bad at all. However, this is where some of my lack of expertise comes in. I don't know. I don't know what their average profit margin should be. What my instincts tell me is that we're kind of fluctuating around here. I mean, we're having kind of dramatic profit fluctuations at this point. So our PE could actually be much lower than this. A little bit of deviation, increase in profit margin could swing this rapidly. You could go from 80. I mean, that's why our forward PE is in the 40s and our PE is in the 80s. That's just slight fluctuations in that. But what we're seeing is also a company that has more than doubled revenue. That's a good sign. But like I said, I don't know what the profit margin should be. I could do some research and say, okay, this specific, but I don't even know if they do the exact same stuff. I don't know what percentage it comes from drones, and that's part of the being in the dark. Of course, if we do a deep dive, I would like to dive into that, but also I don't even know how available that specific information is. That's another thing with smaller companies. It's just harder to find the information. But if we're looking like at growth in revenue, 21%, 32%, 14%, we're projecting next year. So that's even a moderate, guiding, but even then 15%, that's the worst we've had in the last number of years. But that's much better than you'd expect the average company to do. S&P 500 on average performs, 9% conservatively, 12%, if we're being super optimistic. Then I usually like to say 7% after inflation if you calculate year after year. So 14.5% revenue. That is like the worst we've had, and it's still much better than you would expect the S&P 500 to do, even on the best of times. So even if we had our profit margin and it was whatever it may be, and then we're basing the value of the company off of that PE of that profit margin, right? We're still growing the revenue enough that we're growing way faster than the average company. So wherever that PE levels off at, wherever that profit margin levels off at, if we can increase revenue anywhere near this much, it's going to be pretty. So there's other commentary we could have here about, okay, spending, right? Because they're going to be tied to their defense. They're tied to government contracts and things like that. We could have a whole political debate. Oh, this party is going to spend. I don't know. But what I do know is I don't know it for certain. What I'm guessing and what I think and what I've observed drones and what AeroViroment does specifically is very important. Are they going to win out on it? No. However, I think this is a company that doesn't have a lot of debt, is growing revenue very fast, has not a bad revenue to market cap ratio. I know that's not a common thing, but they're not really profitable, and we don't even necessarily need them to be profitable because when you're a small company, you're growing. Oftentimes investing, you want to take risks with that capital, and we don't mind you not being profitable for a number of years. So I've talked a lot about things, and I really have a lot of thoughts on this company, but in terms of the super deep details, I don't necessarily have them, and I'm not claiming to have them, but hopefully this provides you some baseline. Maybe after watching this video, you have a good understanding of if you're interested in the stock or not at all. And then hopefully you can do some research on that if this video does very, very well. I would not mind doing a deeper dive into it, answering some of those questions that I just don't, having the answers to some of those questions that I just don't have today. But I appreciate all of you for watching. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe. Daily stock content on this channel. Catch you next time.